Well, it's time to talk about the first project. It's due in a little bit less than a month, maybe a little bit closer to 3 weeks. So let's get to it. Let me tell you a little bit about it. I'll start just by remind you guys this is 10% of your overall grade, so definitely a big part of the course. Students will work individually or in groups of 2 or 3 to write a report on one of the statistics topics listed below. So feel free to make yourself a group, you and one other person, you and 2 other people. If you really prefer, you can work individually, and maybe that works better just for your individual needs, and that's okay. However, I recommend that you work in groups if you can. I think you'll get a lot more out of it. That said, you'll pick one of the statistics topics below. So let me quickly just kind of scroll down. So I'll talk to some of these things, but here at the bottom of the first page, you see the topics listed, 27 topics in all. And so, you just have to do one of them. So we got all these in a brief description of each one. Some of these have you do an experiment. Some of them are some kind of a survey and that sort of thing. Okay, once you've decided if you'll work alone or in a group and you've chosen a topic, go ahead and email me, and there's my email right there. One thing though, when you go to choose topics, they are first come, first served. So no 2 groups or individuals or any of that. Nobody's going to be doing the same topic as anybody else. As soon as somebody lets me know they want to do a certain number, then it will be gone. So choose your partner and your topic wisely and quickly. One other thing I should say about groups, maybe you would like to work in a group, but you're just not sure who to work with or don't have people's contact info or something like that. If you want to work in a group, but you just don't know who to reach out to, you can email me and just tell me, hey, I'd like to be placed into a group. And if I get a few people, asking to be placed into a group, then I can form a group that way. So even if, you're not sure who to reach out to, email me and we can put a couple of groups together, maybe like that. That's an option as well. Okay. Let me just talk briefly about the guidelines. Just what's it going to look like when you go to do this project. When completing the project, follow these guidelines. So at the end of the day, it's you're creating a report. So you're going to perform your experiment or survey or whatever it is your topic tells you, and then you create a report on that. So number one, you type it. Probably doesn't need to be said for most people, but it's a good idea for me to tell you guys, you got to type this thing. Okay, number 2, in the main body, use clear, concise language to describe your methods. So for example, if it was a survey that you did, describe the target population, which sampling method did you choose, give lots of detail about how you went about conducting this survey. If it was a survey that you did, avoid bias as much as you can. However, it's understandable that not all bias can be avoided, especially in times like this. And so that's okay if there's some bias that just cannot be avoided, but be sure to talk about it, recognize it, and talk about it. Describe any biases that might be too difficult to avoid. Maybe you're not doing a survey, maybe it's an experiment. Still, give lots of detail about how that experiment was conducted, and even then, there still can be bias even in experiments. So you would want to mention that, recognize any bias, and talk about it as well. Okay, so there'll be this writing piece to your report. Number 3 talks about including graphs and measures. So you will create, you might create histograms, you might create box plots, you might create just a bar graph or a pie chart. You'll do some measures of some kind. Maybe you'll figure out a mean, a median, a mode, quartiles, that sort of thing. or any other helpful data analysis tools that we have studied. Don't include, you just kind of see that note, don't include the raw data. That'll come later. So the raw data that you collect. So here it's just graphs, histogram, box plot, or it's measures like a mean or a median. You'll find all of those things in StatCrunch. So create your histogram or your box plot or your pie chart or whatever in StatCrunch. Let StatCrunch calculate your mean or your quartiles or whatever those are. Okay, you don't have to do any of that by hand. You should not do that by hand. You want to do that in StatCrunch and then put those images into your report. Okay, number 4, after the main body, you want to cite any sources. So there might be a few of these where you need to cite maybe like an online, like a website or something like that. Most of these are not going to need you to cite anything, but some might. Okay, so be careful what yours requires. Number 5, here finally you put all of the raw data at the end of the report. So the raw data usually looks like just a giant table of responses or survey results or experiment outcomes. So it'll just be like a huge table of data at the last page, or might spill over to a second page, something like that. There's no graph there. It's not an average. It's literally what the responses were for each individual or the results of your experiment or whatever. Okay, a lot of times people, they think, well, you really don't tell us how long this should be, how many pages it is. So there's no required length. Simply complete the assignment, complete this report to the best of your ability. I've had people turn in reports for their first project in the past that were 2 pages, maybe a full 2 pages. And that might be plenty enough to complete their assignment. It kind of depends on the topic. I've had other people go 5, 6, 7 pages on the first project. Depending on what kind of graphs you're creating, maybe that takes up more space. Maybe there's more to write about to complete their assignment. So there's no required length. Just be sure you do a thorough job to answer the question and provide enough graphs or measures or discussion. On that note, that's a bit open-ended, right? And you might not be sure. So feel free to discuss your progress with me, or you can email me your work on, early. If it's before the due date, I can get back to you and I might say, yeah, it looks great. It's perfect the way it is. Or I might get back and say, you could really use like a box plot to just, to highlight this thing, or did you consider such and such, or you're missing, something that, like you didn't talk about bias, you want to talk about bias. I can get back to you with that kind of feedback if you submit it to me. Come and talk to me about it early. Okay. Then we get to the COVID-19 update. So I've been doing this first project for a few years, and so what are we going to do now in the circumstances that we're in? So from my understanding, almost all of these topics are still viable under these conditions. However, there just might be some adjustments to make it safe and feasible. So I'll just read what I wrote here. Many of these topics say that one must visit a local business. So you go and visit a business and collect data. For some of these, it may still be possible to visit that business, but of course, for many, it will not be possible. Also, some students may feel uncomfortable or may be unable to visit locations that even if they're open, you might just not feel comfortable doing that, or you might not be able to. In any case like this, you may obtain the data by gathering it from an online source. So no problem. For most of these, it's really no issue to gather the data online. So for example, and if we look at number 1 here, it asks you to go to a local grocery store and collect data for at least 20 different soups from 2 major soup brands or makers. You can find that online, right? You could go and find data, we're talking about like calories, fat, sodium. You can find that, lots of different types of soup from 2 major soup brands. No problem, you can find that online. And so you don't have to visit a store. You could visit a store if you want to. You can visit a grocery store, but there's an option not to. Kind of similar thing in number 2, it asks you to go to a large bookstore that has a prominent display of best-selling fiction and nonfiction hardcover books. Okay, so from my understanding right now, bookstores are not open, and there's no plan to open up bookstores. So that you're definitely going to have to find online. But again, that's totally doable. It says find at least 20 books, some fiction, some nonfiction, record the prices, right? No problem. Like we can find that information online. Okay, so both of these have you go to a local business. Other ones, it'll be a survey. So I'll just read here. Several other topics say that you must conduct a survey. Anything like that, you can do a survey, right? Like through social media. That's probably easier than visiting the local business online and getting data, right? And people were doing that, well before any kind of COVID was going on. People were doing their surveys for these projects through their social media, and that's a really, really good way and fast way to collect your data. So using social media, great option, has been done many times, even pre-COVID. Okay, so that is really all. That's all I wanted to say. Take a look down the list of the 27 topics. Think about if you want to work alone or in a group, or if you want to contact me and I can put you in a group. That's it. That's your project. So yeah, let me know.